On behalf of the Second Chance Heart Transplant Support Group, which many of you may not have heard about, we have a chapter here at HUP. We welcome you. And these three gentlemen are President Dan Smith. I meant to look up this morning how many years these guys were out. In the middle, good friend, Mr. Cohen, who passed away about a year ago, but at the age of 80, he was still working. Still going to the U.S. transplant games and playing, of all things, badminton. And I can tell you what that feels like, because my knees can't do it anymore. It's an amazing guy. Really was an inspiration to all of us. And of course, Steve Herman, who's been volunteering and is back to work now. And so we welcome you all. What a great room filled with fresh new hearts. Some new, some old, but all beating strong, right? I can tell by the smiles. And you are the chosen ones. I mean, not only have you got a heart transplant, but you're here today. And a lot of people are sitting at home. And that's a choice we have to make every day, right? To get up out of that bed, I don't care if you've been transplanted or not, it's still the same challenge. And so today we're going to talk about something very special, and that is communicating with our donor families. And so without further ado, I'd like to just introduce Lara Moretti. She's been a friend for many years. 2003 you started over there at Gift of Life. So she's the supervisor for the Family Services Group, and she'll introduce herself in the background, but she's been a dear friend for many years. And Lara, I welcome you.
Thank you very much. Let me just get my presentation up there. Okay. So thank you for having me here today. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes. Yeah, I usually don't need a microphone. I can project pretty well, it says, so my husband and children say. Thank you for having me here today. As Jim said, I'm the supervisor of our Family Support Services Department at Gift of Life. And what that is we are the department that oversees all of the aftercare and support for families of deceased organ and tissue donors. So there are 3 licensed mental health counselors, including myself, and we provide face-to-face counseling, support groups, referrals. We cover, Gift of Life covers a 3-state area, so we help families wherever they live and provide them with different types of services, because as we all know, grief looks different for different people, and so we tailor our interventions with what the families need. But a big piece of what we do is act as the liaison between transplant recipients and donor families with the communication process. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about writing, and I thought I'd break it into some of our frequently asked questions: who, when, what, how, and why. And if someone has a question while I'm talking, please raise your hand. Yes, sir.
Does any of this relate at all to kidney transplant donors or recipients?
Yes. So the things I'm going to talk about today are applicable to all organ transplant recipients. So thank you. So not just for heart transplant. This works for anybody. And thank you for pointing out my example. If you have a question while I'm talking, just raise your hand and ask a question. That was perfectly timed. Thank you, sir. So to start, who can write? Well, obviously the recipient, but also any member of the recipient's family, as long as the recipient is okay with that, can write a letter. And I stress that because we often hear that the recipient themselves is not maybe ready to write, but other family members really want to be able to express themselves to the donor family. So it is okay for another family member to write on behalf of the recipient. I would just say, talk to your family member who's the recipient first, make sure they are okay with you writing on their behalf. When can you write? Really? Anytime. I think there used to be the idea that you had to wait, don't write for the first year. People used to say, well, I was told I couldn't write for the first year. And I hope no one is being told that anymore. Really, you can write anytime. Many people write, shortly after their discharge, when they get home and they're getting settled. Sometimes people choose to write around the holiday season. We know that as recipients, you're very grateful to have this holiday season. You're also aware how difficult a holiday may be for the family, and that's a time people have often written. People often write around the anniversary of the transplant. But really, any time in between is an okay time to write. When you're ready to write, that's when you write. I feel like it's never too soon and it's never too late. If it's been 3 years and you haven't written, You shouldn't feel like you've missed that window and you can't write now. Anytime you choose to write is the right time. You know, one thing, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I'll mention here, because a concern is often, well, what if it's not a good time for the donor family to get my letter? When we send letters to the families, when we get your card or your letter, we will put it in an envelope. We then have a cover letter from our organization that says, enclosed, you'll find a card from the heart recipient of your loved one's donation. That cover letter goes on top of the envelope, and then together they go into an envelope to the family. So we try to preface what's enclosed so that if a family is having a bad day, or maybe wants to wait until everyone gets home from work and school so they can open up this letter as a family, they can do that. We don't want people to be surprised in a bad way about the content, so we do preface it. So families can choose when they want to open that letter. What kind of things can you write in your letter? Donor families know very little, anything about the recipients for privacy reasons. So currently, Gift of Life, when a family, when their family's loved one becomes a donor, Gift of Life sends them a letter about a week after the donation to say a little bit about the individuals who received the transplant. The information that we share is very, very generic. We will say a man in his 50s received the heart. A woman in her 30s received the right kidney. A man in his 40s will receive the left kidney. We don't include location, we don't include exact age, we don't include diagnosis or reason you need a transplant. We do elaborate in that letter why people may need a heart transplant or why someone might need a lung transplant so that the family can really understand the need and what this gift can mean, but we don't share individual details about the recipients for privacy reasons. So what you decide to share is what the family will learn. You can talk about how long you waited, why you needed a transplant. There are many different reasons why someone finds himself in need of a kidney transplant or a heart transplant. So you can talk about that, how your life has changed. And those are some of, I think, the things that donor families really love to hear. What that someone was able to see or accomplish because of this gift. Tell them about your hobbies and your interests. You can talk about your family. You can say, I'm married and I have 3 children. We do say, you know, if you're going to talk about members of your family and yourself, to just use your first name and to not use anything that's identifying. So we still want to maintain some confidentiality and some privacy. So sharing details about yourself without it being something that can make you identifiable. So if you used to be a teacher for the Philadelphia School District and you were an elementary school teacher at Greenfield Elementary, I wouldn't put that in your letter, but you could say, I was an elementary school teacher. That is information that gives a story but doesn't identify, you know, you never know who might know someone at that school. You can say, I live in New Jersey, but not in Atlantic City, New Jersey. We want to just maintain a little bit of privacy on both sides. And I'll talk about that. So we want to make sure everyone's in the right place at the same time to kind of know that information. And between Facebook and the internet, the connections that we have to each other are much shorter. It's easier to connect now than it was when I started here 10 years ago. It just was, I couldn't even imagine what Facebook would do to the world of donor families and recipients. Does anyone have any questions about the content of the letter? How do you send the letter? If you don't know who your donor family is, how do you get it to them? So there's 2 ways you can give it to your transplant center. So for those of you here who are heart transplant recipients, Deb or Sally, you can give the letter to them, and then they'll send it to Gift of Life. You can also send it directly to Gift of Life. There were brochures out there that talked about writing to the family. The address is in there, so you can send it to us. We review it. As I said, the 3 of us, the 3 counselors, we review the letters to make sure that they are following our confidentiality guidelines, like that I mentioned in the slide previously. We will then send the letter to the donor family, as I explained before, with a cover letter. It's closed in an envelope with a cover letter, then sent. If it's a family that, if your organ came from another part of the country, we will send it to the Gift of Life, like organization in that part of the country, the other OPO, organ procurement organization. Because we don't have relationships with those donor families, so I rely on my colleagues at those organizations to send it to the donor family. After the letter is forwarded on, we always send back a confirmation letter to whoever we got it to let the writer know that we got the letter and we sent it on. So if you gave your letter to Deb, Deb sent it to me, I send it to the donor family, I'm going to send Deb a letter back that says, you know, please tell Mr. Gleason that we forwarded his letter to the donor family. If you send it directly to me and you've included your address, you know, your return address, I will send the letter back to you. On rare occasions, letters are returned to us because the donor family has moved and we don't have a forwarding address. We always hold on to those letters in case the family will contact us and say, you know, hey, I moved, has there been anything? We will also let the writer know that we weren't able to connect with the donor family. But if you don't hear that, otherwise you should assume that it got to where it needed to go. And we also, as I said, keep copies on file for a number of reasons. We always want to have kind of a history of the correspondence between the donor families and the recipients, and in the off chance that someone has moved, or we've had people who called me and said, we had a flood in my basement, and I had a box down there with all kinds of things, and the letters were damaged. Can you make copies of them? We have copies of them. So, you know, we have a lot of files, on-site and off-site, but we keep copies of everything. We never want to lose a letter if someone wants to get a copy of it again. So I think the more important question is why write? And you know, in my opinion, it's really important, I think, to share something about yourself. As I said, donor families don't really know anything about you. They just know your gender and your general age, and that's all they know. And so to get a more fuller picture of who was impacted by their loved one's gift is very meaningful for these families. I think it's important to express your sympathy and your gratitude. These are families who are grieving, but for many of them, well, I should say for all of them, donation is that little bit of good out of something so bad. Many of them see that right away, and they really hold on to that. Some of them take a little bit longer to see that, but donation is that little bit of good. And to know about how their loved one's legacy continues to go on through the recipients can be very comforting and very meaningful for these families. I also feel like, though, it's an important part of your healing to really kind of come to terms with the complexity of this gift. While you and your family are overjoyed at this second chance, the juxtaposition with knowing that there is a family who has been devastated is really hard. And that is a really hard concept to internalize, to hold on to. It's difficult, so it's natural to kind of want to push that away. But I think when recipients are able to fully grasp that, they become even better stewards of this gift, because they are really able to integrate what this gift means. Everyone wants to do well after transplant, but it's not an easy road. It can be bumpy, but knowing that you are the keeper of this amazing gift and that it's connected to a donor and a donor family is hopefully, it's I think a very important part of the emotional healing that recipients go through. And so whether you ever hear back from a donor family, there is still value in the process of writing, of getting your words down on paper, of thinking about what you would say to this family, how you would express your gratitude. That's a very important thing for all recipients to go through, regardless of what transplant they received or how long ago. Why not yet? Why do some people say they're not able to write yet? Some people are concerned medically. Maybe they're having a little bit of a bumpy course following transplant, and so they want to wait till things stabilize. So they wait a little bit. We've heard that. As I mentioned, there's a huge mix of emotions, right? There's the joy juxtaposed with the knowledge of a family's sadness, and that's really difficult to kind of come with words, and exactly the right words. I mean, I hear this time and time again. Thank you just does not seem to be enough. I cannot find the words to adequately express myself. And when someone says that to me, I say, that's what you write down. If you're telling me that I can't find the words to express how thankful I am, that's what you write to the family. I can't find the words to express how thankful I am. You just wrote it. You just wrote a letter. You know, so, and it's true. I mean, we say thank you. You know, Deb gave me this cup of water. Thank you, Deb, for the water. How are those thank you words? How are those words all the same for the thank you for saving my life? But we are limited to our language of what we can say. So you say whatever you can say in the best way possible, and even if it feels like it's not enough, it's something. And that's really important. Gift of Life actively encourages correspondence. So we have something called our recipient kits. This box should look it's changed a little bit over the years. This is the most recent version. Does this box look familiar to most people? Maybe what people remember is the watch. Is that what people remember? So we have these kits. We give them out to all of our transplant programs free of charge. We have an adult version and a pediatric version for children who receive transplants. They get a little stuffed heart man. Heart man's our little mascot. They're kind of blue, this man. It has a few purposes. It's one, to congratulate recipients on getting their gift. It's letting them know about Gift of Life, because many people don't realize Gift of Life's connection to the process. It's also, you know, encouraging them to become active members of our community as volunteers, or learning about what's going on in the Gift of Life community. We don't have your information. It's private, even from Gift of Life, so we can't just send you mailers and information about events, so we have to have you let us know you'd like to know about things. It also includes a brochure about writing to your donor's family with suggested text. So, Deb, I'm going to put you on the spot. When do you give recipients the kits?
When they're being discharged.
When they're being discharged, great. So when patients are being discharged, this is part of the discussion. So right there, let's think about writing to your family, which is great. Different hospitals do it at different times. I know another program, when they come back for their first post-op visit in the clinic, it'll be given to them then, and it's part of a larger discussion. So we've been doing this now probably 8 years or so, and I've definitely seen an increase in the number of letters we get from recipients. Whether it's, because in here we have like a little identification card. So this is actually, it says, writing to the family of your donor. It includes some quotes. It includes even some sample text. And this is a card that people can, it's perforated, they can rip off and send in with their letter, so it has all of their information needed so that we can send it to the right family. So I get a lot of these cards, so I can see exactly, how many people use this. But I also know that even if people are using their own stationery and using their own words, they've been impacted by this. So this has been a wonderfully successful tool. We have brochures that we give to transplant centers at no charge. There's some out on the table, so if you haven't taken one, please take one on your way out. We also added something to our website a few years ago. We were finding that people were coming to our website to learn about the process of writing, and then we would expect them to, write a letter, which the act of writing is kind of an old-fashioned thing, right? I mean, we all text, and I was just having a conversation about Facebook and email, and no one talks on the phone anymore, and no one writes letters, like with a pen on paper. So we added something to our website where we have a form that you can fill out and type in your letter, and it comes to me in an email. I print out the body of your text. I make it like a nice font. I double space it. I try to make it look pretty. And then we print that out and send that to the family. And I get a lot of those on a daily basis because people are there on our website, and more and more people are used to just typing in their thoughts. And so we've been getting a lot of letters that way too. We have one for donor families and we have a form for recipients, so we get it both sides. So the big question is always, well, what about meeting? Will I meet my donor's family? Our panelists are going to come up later and talk about their experiences. It does happen, as we will hear. It doesn't happen to everybody. I would say it should not be your end goal in writing, but it does happen. But before it happens, a few things need to take place. Everything is made confidential for at least the first year. So we want to see several letters by both the family and the recipient family, back and forth, before we'll even kind of broach the idea of it. Both the recipient and the donor family have to kind of want this. If one person wants it and the other person isn't ready, we don't move forward. And we have conversations, primarily I'm having these conversations with the donor families, because this is who I have a relationship with, about the considerations regarding direct communication. Emotionally, where are they? What kind of relationship are they imagining? Is this someone they think they'll just exchange Christmas cards with once a year? Are they hoping this is someone who they're going to see every couple of months? You know, what are they imagining in this new relationship? And to think about, you know, because once this information is out, it can't be taken back. So let's think about just some of the considerations with communicating directly. And then Deb has similar discussions with the transplant recipients. And at other programs, also it's usually the social worker who will talk to the transplant recipient. But I also, you know, Gift of Life, we always make ourselves available. If recipients have questions and they want to talk to us in addition, we make ourselves available to talk to them about the process as well. Because we do it more than one transplant program, right? Because we cover so many transplant programs, so we're doing this more often than perhaps the heart transplant program at Penn does on any given year. And we have forms. We call them our consent and release forms. We would send the forms to the donor family, we send the forms to the recipient, and it basically is permission to release your information. Once we get the forms back from both sides, then we send a letter with the information. And after that, it's really up to the donor family and the recipient how they want to move forward. I often stress, even though you have all the information, still taking it slow. People are always, I just want to meet the person. I say, you know, take it slow, write some more letters, talk on the phone, email. I think emails can be a good entry to it, you know, because then people can respond in their own time, and you're not worrying about calling someone in the middle of dinner or when the kids are going to school or things like that. And then getting to know them slowly. I often will tell people, because for many people they have not done this before, it's kind of like going on a blind date. And if you imagine if you're meeting someone for the first time for dinner and you've never met them before, but you know their name and you know your friend said you'd be good, so let's meet for dinner, versus someone who you spoke to on the phone a couple times and maybe you exchanged a few emails and then you finally met for dinner, which dinner is going to be a little bit more comfortable? Probably the one where you've had some chance to kind of get to know the person. And I know a donor-family recipient relationship is not like dating, but it's the only analogy that I could use that most people can relate to. So we encourage people to still take it slowly so that when you do meet, it can be that beautiful, it will be a beautiful, intense meeting, but you want everyone to be ready for it. So I'm going to have our panelists come up, and while they do, are there any questions about the process as far as where the letters go, how we send them? Any questions about the process? No? Yes?
You mentioned excluding identifying information. Should you get a letter that does have that, do you get back to the author, or do you edit the letters?
Yeah, sure. So the question was, if we have information in the letter that is identifiable, what do we do? We will edit it out, and we'll kind of include in the return letter that there was identifiable information and we edited it out. So we will, generally speaking, we use whiteout and then we photocopy it, because people will scratch off whiteout and a black marker, you can kind of see through it. So we're on to you. So that's what we do. Yeah. All right, so yes.
Mary, you said that you just tell general information, a male is 50.
Range and age range, yes.
Do you ever do that with the recipient in telling general information about the donor?
You know, the transplant center, so the question was, the donor family is told very limited information about the recipient, and the question was, what is the recipient told about the donor family? And the short answer is it depends. Each transplant center does it a little bit differently. There are some transplant programs that will tell the recipients nothing. There are some that will tell age and gender and maybe cause of death. Depending on the organ, there are some things that transplant centers have to tell the recipients so that they can know about risk factors. So there may be something about the donor's history that's told to the recipient, but not name, not something like they should not. That doesn't mean that sometimes things aren't overheard or on both sides, but we work very, very hard to maintain the confidentiality of everybody. Yes, one more question, and then I'll have our panel come up. Yes, sir.
Sorry. What does I guess I wasn't paying attention. You gave the initials FSS and OPO.
So FSS is Family Support Services. That is our department. And OPO is Organ Procurement Organization. Gift of Life is one of the organ procurement organizations in the country. The country is split up into organ procurement organizations. There's certain territories throughout the country so that it's based by hospital. It's federally designated so that when there is a death within a certain region, there's only one organization that's going to approach the family about donation.
Based on the territorial agreement between the hospital and these OPOs?
Yes, the federal government kind of drew some lines, and I think there's about 135 hospitals in Gift of Life's region.
Okay.
Yeah, Gift of Life is Eastern Pennsylvania to that State College, Southern New Jersey, so kind of like Camden down, and all of the state of Delaware.
What about Maryland?
Maryland is a different organization.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So I can have Janice and Jim, Marlene, Pam, Jim, and Winston please join us.
Better if I can just clarify, we're obviously recording the session. We use this for a program that we put out in the Transplant Presentation Library for an organization called TRIO, Transplant Recipient International Organization, and that goes across the country, the chapters, so people who can't come to things like this or don't have a Lara Moretti in their region or hospital putting these things on can benefit from what we're saying. If you have anything that you say that you don't want on there, all you have to do is talk to me. Okay, I can edit it out, that's not a problem, so please don't let that hinder anything that you're sharing.
Thank you for that. So we have a great group here today representing lots of different perspectives. At the end, so I listed them in alphabetical order, but they didn't sit that way. So at the very end, we have Marlene. You can just wave to the crowd. We have Marlene.
That's me.
And then we have Janice and Jim. And then Pam and Jim and Winston. Last but not least, Winston. If I could just have you guys briefly explain to the group here your connection to donation and transplantation, kind of why, for the transplant recipients, why you did a transplant, when you got transplanted. Pam is our donor family member, if you could tell what your connection is to donation. And then we're going to ask more pointed questions about the correspondence process. So Winston, I'll start with you. Sir.
So my name is Winston McCoy. I am actually a week short of my 63rd birthday. Donna, can you raise your hand? I can't see that far. That's my rock back there, my wife, Donna. Just raise your hand again. So, if it's not for her, I probably wouldn't be here. So, a little bit about, I have a heart transplant. It occurred 8 years and 2 weeks ago. And what led me to this was over time I discovered that I had this, the doctors determined that I had this enlarged heart. And it was getting weaker and weaker. And cut out some of it, but in December of '02, I had a couple of pacemakers in my chest. I was in a local hospital, and a Brazilian doctor there said to me that it's time you start considering heart transplant. It was definitely not the thing that I wanted to hear, but I went home and I asked about my cardiologist to give me a couple names, and I went and looked at it. That was '02. In the intervening years, my heart failure kept getting worse, and I ended up here at Penn after a little bit of review. I live in the southern part of New Jersey, so that's why I'm here. And in August of '05, came here. They said I needed a heart transplant and put me on the list at that point. But I've been interviewed so far up to that point. And what else do you want to do?
So you were put on the list in August of '05, and when did you get?
September of '05.
You got your
September 1st, '05, and I got my transplant September 17th of '05.
Wow. Okay.
My donor is not from this region, so I'm one of those trans-regional person. My donor is actually from a little town named St. Mary's, Kansas, and the incident which precipitated him becoming a donor occurred in small town of Mundelein, Illinois, north of Chicago, a seminary school. Next question, go ahead.
I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves. So
Right.
now, Jim, please.
My name is Jim Gleason, and I go back to 1994 here at HOP when a virus attacked my heart, and after a couple of years ended up on the transplant list here, and was very fortunate to have the heart of eventually what I learned was a 38-year-old gentleman over in Brooklyn, New York. And so I've got this healthy young heart coming into at that time, 50-year-old. And we were able to make contact through a book that I wrote called A Gift from the Heart. And that's online and free, and we made connection, and arrangements were made before a lot of these processes were in place, and before Lara was there, a surprise meeting, which you never want to do, okay? But it was a very positive meeting. We happened to be down in Florida for the U.S. Transplant Games, and it turns out he had moved, his family had moved there. And so his brother, who made the decision for him back in '94, he didn't have registries, was able to come to the Transplant Games, and I was able to host him at the donor recognition ceremony there. And so since then, we've talked on the phone, but more often than not, it's a once-a-year anniversary letter giving an update on how things are going with my family.
My name is Pam Cobble-Gleason. I'm Jim's wife, but prior to knowing Jim in 1997, as a divorced parent, my 13-year-old son, while riding his bicycle, was struck by a speeding motorist on a cell phone and killed, and was taken to a trauma center, and several hours later, many hours later, after a determination of brain death, the decision was made to donate his organs. They were able to successfully recover his liver and both of his kidneys. I never heard from one of the recipients at all. And as Lara stated, you know, you get a letter that says the left kidney went to Pittsburgh to a 30-year-old, and the right kidney went to, and the lungs or the liver went to, and that's about all you know. They were all in their middle 30s. They were all men. Christopher was 6'1" and weighed 174 pounds at 13 years of age, so his organs went to adults. One of his recipients I heard from about 2.5 years, 3 years after the transplant, and about 4.5 years after transplant, through letter writing and email, we met one time. And I have not, other than sending him a birthday card and a Christmas card, and he sends me a Christmas card, that's the only communication we have at this point in time, and that's perfectly fine, because donation is an anonymous process. In our situation, just prior to consenting to donation, I realized that I had a first cousin who was already on dialysis for 2.5 years waiting for a gift, and we were able to designate his donation, and they were a 6 antigen perfect match, so he has one of Christopher's kidneys. So I see him occasionally because it's a family member when you have the picnics and you know, that sort of thing. 2 of his recipients are still alive and doing very well at this point in time, but one of them has passed to an issue totally unrelated to his transplant. and becoming a volunteer at Gift of Life Donor Program. I met Jim, and today is our 8th wedding anniversary.
The other part of the story is to say, I gave back my gifted heart to a donor mom.
You still have to get her a gift today. All right, Jim, if you could share your story with everybody.
My name is Jim Callio. I guess back when I was in my early 30s or late 30s, I had a silent heart attack, which caused a tremendous amount of damage on the lower part of the heart. Did not even know I had it. A couple years later, I had an insurance exam, and they told me that I had a heart attack, to really both our surprise. Damage caused lots of arrhythmia problems, went through a lot of ablations, had a defibrillator. I was at Temple when I first started to go to the doctor, and when Dr. Wall transferred here, I followed her over here. I was like 16, 17 years, I was able to really keep the heart I had, and it just got to the point, it was October 2010, sitting in the car waiting for my daughter, she was getting her hair done, and I got a pain like in my stomach, and I said, something's wrong, and I wasn't sure what it was. And it was at the point where I really felt like I got shot in the stomach. I went and got my daughter, got home, went home, was laying on the couch, and she came home from work and looked at me and said, you gotta go to the emergency room. I said, I'm fine, I got a stomach ache, you know. And she said, no way, and she called Dr. Wall right away, and they brought me into an emergency, and my organs were just all shutting down, the liver, the kidney, and everything. And, next thing I know, that they were going to bring me into surgery, and they spoke to Dr. Rami. Dr. Rami said, no, just give us a few minutes, let us think about it. And in a matter of seconds, the next thing I know is that the helicopter guys came in. And it was an amazing, you know, I was kind of like drugged out because I was in a lot of pain, but they just came in and they swooped in and they took me to Penn, and they were able to get me back to normal, but at that point they realized that it was time to, you know, put me on the transplant list. I was put on the transplant list in October. About a month later, they said they didn't like my numbers and my liver didn't look right, so they went ahead and they did a biopsy on my liver and realized the liver was damaged. Cirrhosis, and it was pretty bad, so they realized I had the heart and liver transplant. So around, I guess it was around December, by the time they got this whole thing done, and they put me on the list, and in May 16, 2011, they put me in the hospital, and they said that you're going to stay here and wait for your organs. And I only waited 8 days. On May 24th, they came around 3 in the morning and they told me, you know, Jim, we have your organs. And at that point, what was important to me is when I called my family and I called my wife and I called my kids, and I told them, before you do anything, the first thing, let's just say a quick prayer and pray for the person, you know, unfortunately, who's had some sort of accident or problem. And the family all came. My son was in Missouri. I actually lives in Missouri, and he was able to actually get here in time. He jumped on a plane immediately. He was on business, and my grandkids and daughter-in-law, and they all got here, and I went in for surgery around 9 in the morning. Around 9 in the morning, and I did well. Right after surgery, I was doing great, and then my kidneys failed, and I was on dialysis for 5 or 6 days. And then after that, it took about a month or two. My kids lived in my house with us, and I did really well. What was important to me, once I started to feel better, was to send a letter. That was what was really important. So the whole family got together. We all put the letter together. We put our thoughts in it, and we sent it out. And we were fortunate to hear back and realize that my donor was 21 years old. He died just real sudden. I'm not real sure why he passed. And they happened to live only like 7 or 8 miles away from my daughter. My daughter was out on a farm, and we talked back and forth a few times, and we met. And it's been a great experience. So I'm living a great life now. I'm able to actually see my grandkids. We travel. We're leaving for Disney tomorrow. We're going to be with the grandkids for a few days. But I think the most important part to everyone in the room is to realize that as hard as it was for me, and I went through 20 years of being sick, it was harder on my wife. I don't know how she did it. I don't know how she took care of me for all those years. Yeah, I went through the surgery, you know, she had to hold the kids together, she had to keep strong for the kids and everything else. And without having a support team to really hold you together, it's extremely hard. So I've been very lucky. So, and that's, you know, as the gentleman at the end said, this is my rock, and she's the one that kept the entire family together. Without her, it just never would have happened.
Well, I'm Janice Cavanaugh, and I am the rock. And I'm the support team and the rah-rah team. And I learned that real quick. Guiding him through the process was a bit of a challenge, but we made each day better because we knew, I've always said, and I was always taught, there's somebody always worse than you. You don't have it that bad. You just figure it out, you deal with it, and you make it better. And we were blessed to meet the donor family, and we see them at least once a month. We try to give back what they've given to us. It is kind of interesting, and you'll hear it during the thing, but I will share one little quick story. He did receive the first letter, and I was such a proud rah-rah team, but I took this letter and I framed it, and I had it in the family room, and it would always be there, and he would read it. And then all of a sudden, he got very quiet and reserved, and when Deb called us, and she said, we received another letter, and they want to meet. I didn't understand, and it was very hard to understand what he was feeling, because I was too busy saying, wow, they came into our lives, but I didn't understand what he was feeling. And little did I understand until he met with Deb, that he couldn't grasp it yet. He couldn't take that 21-year-old that was sitting on my wall and how I made a part of it. It took him a little time, and I needed to understand that, and I think everybody needs to understand what we feel is different than what they actually feel. And that's, we're blessed, so.
Okay, my turn. My name is Moretti, and listening to these stories, I'm reminded of many events in my own experience. In 1996, I was away on vacation and had a day where I just couldn't settle down and rest and sleep, but I was fine the next day. When I came home from that wonderful time in Puerto Vallarta, I started to have some picky sensation in my chest. Saw my cardiologist, and he said, you have to go right across the street and have heart surgery. You have 100% obstructions in your vessels. I went home, called my primary care doc, and said, that was some quack you sent me to. He said, well, that quack is not a quack, and he's correct. Get back to the hospital. So I had bypass surgery. I had 6 bypasses done. And within a year, 5 of them failed and re-occluded. So then they sent me to see a transplant cardiologist in the name of Dr. Susan Brusino. And she said, well, I'll examine you first and then we'll talk. Well, I thought that was reasonable. And when she came back to talk, she said, you're going to the hospital on Friday. This was a week before Thanksgiving in 1998. I said, well, what am I going to the hospital for? She said, to begin to wait for a heart. I said, oh, for God's sake, I don't need a heart. And certainly not now. Thanksgiving day. What about Christmas? No. Well, what about into the New Year? No. Friday. And I said, well, there's no way I can go home and get myself ready to be in the hospital in 2 days. How long will I be there? Probably 2 or 3 months. So anyway, I went in that Friday, accompanied by my rock, Mary Ann Bendy, my best friend, and her husband, Steve Kuzinski. I always thought of Mary Ann as my earth angel through this whole process. She always thinks of herself as a pack mule. I lived in Delaware, and I was here at Penn for 8 months waiting in the hospital for my heart. And she was always bringing clothes, food, computers, mail, checkbooks, So my view of her as my earth angel was not supported by her eyewitness testimony of just hauling things back and forth. But nevertheless, I went in that week before Thanksgiving in '98, and in July of '99, I was transplanted. That was the day before portable pumps were available, and we pushed our IVs on a pole, so we were the pole people until the portable pumps came around. I followed afterwards the usual procedure, the shroud of secrecy around organ recipients in donor families. I wrote a letter, and fortunately, the mother of my donor was still receiving some counseling from one of the social workers at the Gift to Life program. So when she passed on the letter, the social worker called me and said my donor's mother wanted permission to call. So that was fine. She called me and we talked about an hour on the phone, and she wanted to meet a month from that time. Okay, that was fine. I no sooner hung up and she said, forget that, I want to meet tomorrow. And she wanted to meet out in Chalfont, PA, at Peace Lake Park, where her son's ashes had been placed. So she brought her best friend, I brought my best friend, and coincidentally another close friend lived a quarter mile from the park and ran there every day. So my donor was a young man named David. He was 18 years old, just graduated from high school. For the 4th of July, he went down to the shore with his family and grandparents, and after the 4th began his first job as a Cutco cutlery salesman. He was destined to go to Virginia Tech. He had a full scholarship, was a key scholar in high school, and a member of the Honor Society, and was killed in a very freakish accident. It isn't always a dramatic crash or anything like that, but he had his dad's Mazda Miata driving to work, and they believe that he probably was blinded by the sun that day, and the car went out into a ditch, which was not fatal. His mother said at the reconstruction of the crime by the police, if it were she and I, we probably would have called AAA. She thought David felt, my dad's going to kill me if I've messed up this car. And he was in a field where there were all spindly trees and one huge tree. And he put the gas on, tried to get the car out of the ditch. It fishtailed. The driver's side hit the big tree trunk, broke a rib, pierced a lung. He wasn't found for 20 minutes. However, he was medevaced to a hospital in Allentown, a major trauma center, where they desperately tried to save his life for the next 2 days, until he was taken off life support and his organs were donated. When I had that phone call and the subsequent visit with his mother, she amazingly brought with her pictures from his birth in the delivery room, through all the events of his life. She played a recording of a poem he had written, brought his high school graduation pictures, his application for college and why he thought he deserved a scholarship. And it was an experience where I felt that his heart and mine were surgically joined, and now we were a complete package. I found out that in the surgical procedure, what was called the top of your heart, or the roof of your heart, was kept, so the donor organ could be connected to it. I always thought of that as a seamless procedure, and it was not two separate hearts, but we were one heart. I've been able to have an ongoing relationship these 14 years with his mother. In the aftermath of our initial meeting, she came to visit me in my house. She had a reception for me at her home, and I met David's grandparents from both sides of the family, his younger sister and brother. His mother had recently married. In fact, a week after his death, he was supposed to walk her down the aisle. And we've stayed in touch all this time. I always get a new family picture at Christmas. I always send her a single rose on the anniversary of his birth. And we call every few months or so and have had a very positive relationship. And that's been very good, I think, for everybody. Although initially, when she came to my house alone to visit, she was leaving, she said, you know, Marlene, I'd like to put my arms around you, but I'm afraid to. I said, why are you afraid? She said, I'm afraid I'll never let go. And all that was very meaningful to her, obviously. But it was a great opportunity, not only for both of us, but we subsequently did a program with the Gift of Life and did a video for them about our experience. And we went up to Allentown to the hospital to meet with the trauma team and the OR team who desperately tried to keep this young man alive. And to have them understand the experience of harvesting his organs and having them been brought to HUP to be transplanted here. And it was a remarkable revelation for them as well. Just unbelievable, because they never really would know what happened to harvested organs, except that they went somewhere, you know, to somebody. But the Gift of Life program played a very instrumental role, I think, in bringing together this process, because fortunately the social worker had continued to have contact with David's mother throughout this time. She was, as you can imagine, having a very, very difficult time with the death of her son. And I thought it was a marvelous opportunity in many ways when we decided to meet at Peace Lake Park, where his ashes had been put. I was thinking recently in coming here that there was a tremendous amount of anticipation on my part to meet her, but also a tremendous amount of anxiety. Because my idea was I should be taller, thinner, and I didn't care if I was blonde or not. But none of that was going to happen overnight. And there was a sense of, well, is she going to think I'm okay? He was 18, I was 54 when I received the start. His life was just beginning. My life, everybody was telling me, was probably coming to an end. So I had concerns about, well, am I going to be acceptable to her? Am I going to be a disappointment? I can't do much about it now.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great comment, because whether we're meeting whether the recipient and the donor family are meeting, or it's just writing, I think those are natural concerns. Am I who the family would want their loved one's organs to go to? And often, on the flip side, donor families are concerned, you know, what will the recipient think about my loved one? What will they ask? What will they want to know? Are there circumstances around the death that might be something that they're afraid to share? So those kind of anxieties are on both sides. I usually do this with the group, and I didn't do this before. By a show of hands in the room, how many recipients here or family members have written to their donor family already? Yeah, so a good number. Good, okay. You were supposed to raise your hand, Jim.
So,
yeah, you figured it was obvious. It was obvious, yeah. So on the panel, if you could say, Winston, Jim, and Marlene, who was the first person to write? Did you write first, or did you hear from your donor family first?
I wrote first.
You wrote first?
And it took me a while. My letter took me close to 2 years to write.
Okay.
I wrote the letter 5 different times. It sat on my computer. I read it several times. I have a sense that it's cathartic when I wrote it, but I wasn't ready to send it.
Yes.
And it didn't look presentable enough. And yes, the words "thank you" seems inadequate to communicate the level of gratitude that I felt, the meaning that this meant in my life. And at one time in my life, I was a corporate type, and I taught this course about expression of appreciation. And when you express appreciation, it should be for a specific thing, and you need to tell what it meant to you. And this is in a corporate business environment, obviously, but we're also talking about a transaction here from me, from my heart. And so that it took me a while to write, and the lady sitting in the back there would bug me about it on about a quarterly basis. Did you send that letter? No. Did you finish it? No. I'm rewriting it right now, you know, so, but I did get it done, so.
I think that's a pretty typical experience. Jim, how about you?
The other type of experience. I didn't have any hesitation. I felt the urge to say thank you, and yes, it's inadequate, but as soon as you start writing the word thank you, the sentence continues. And so the real challenge is to pick up that pen or keyboard or whatever you're doing and just start. You can edit it forever, that's fine, but to get that first word down is the first part. And then, as you said, when it's actually mailing it, it's a different issue.
Yes.
But it was not an issue that I had to face in the same way. Everybody's different in that way.
So if I can just add a follow-up question to that, Jim. So you wrote first. Did you hear back from the family right away, or was there a period of time before you did? Do you remember what the time frame was?
I don't remember, okay? Because I had written a book, as I said before, and that was up on the internet. And I forget how we first communicated, whether I got a call or what. What I do remember is when we came face to face.
Okay.
But that goes back 19 years now, and I make up stories 19 years ago in my mind, so I'd rather not suggest what I
Fair enough. Okay, fair enough. And things were the process was different then. Pam, did you, it sounds like you initiated.
I wrote first.
Yes.
I initiated. I wrote a letter that just explained who my son was, how old he was, what he loved to do, play soccer, you know, all that sort of stuff, and sent it to the OPO, and they then sent it out to the 2 unknown recipients. And that was probably 6 months after, and for me that was a cathartic experience because I got to put on paper who I thought my son was. And I revised it several times before I mailed it myself because I wanted them to think that they had gotten an organ from the perfect child, essentially. I wanted them to think they had gotten the best gift in the world they could have ever gotten. And that was a very long time before I heard back from the liver recipient and never heard back from the kidney recipient. And it's been 16 years and I've never heard anything from that particular kidney recipient, but I have just a little tidbit of information. I have contacted the OPO and they could do follow-up to tell me that recipient, you know, give me an update on his health. And then at some point in time, they had to tell me that he had passed from prostate cancer. So.
And that is something we also do. Pam's son died in a different region.
Yeah, my son was not through Gifted Life Donor Program.
But we do something similar. If donor families have not heard from the recipient, but they are curious to know how they're doing, we will request an update. And so we'll contact Deb and we'll say, hey, can you tell me how, you know, Mr. Smith is doing? His donor family is wondering, and she'll, you know, heart is functioning well, he's doing really well, he's gone back to work, or, you know, so be able to kind of share a little bit of kind of social information so that we can share that with the family. And we do also, if sometimes the recipient dies, we share that with the family as well. Jim and Janice.
We wrote our letter, it was 6 months to the date of transplant. And the only reason why I waited 6 months was, like Laura mentioned, I was told you had to wait 6 months, which, like Laura said, you know, it's really not true. You do what you feel. And it was important to us, or me, that I do it, that I sent a letter. Just to say thanks, and however, you know, it was important to me that we did it as a family, and we did. You know, the 10 of us sat, 9 of us, like that, sat down, and we put the letter together and put our little ideas in what we wanted to send, and we sent it. And that was exactly 6 months of the date. when I started the letter. And we finalized it and it was out in the mail in a couple of days. And then I heard back within, I guess,
A week.
yeah, well, no, a couple of weeks.
It was quick.
It was quick, yeah.
It was really quick.
I guess my daughter Scott, he was 21, and he died fairly sudden, and I think the mother needed some sort of closure to know, where his organs went and if I.
He was their only child.
When he was their only child. So it was important to her. By receiving the letter from me, it meant a lot to her. So it's been a great experience for us. Like we said, we see them we see them once a month, every other month, and we get together, we go out to dinner, and it's been nice. And if I helped her at all, any closure, knowing that I went to a good family, someone who takes care of you, because I'm doing good, and meeting my family. When we met, the first time we met. My daughter lives on her husband's grandmother's farm, and we met there because they were only a couple miles down the road. We were going to meet at some park, and then we decided, and I told him, I said, why don't we just meet right on the farm, because we did. It was just very nice. My entire family was there, kids all flew in from Missouri, so it was a real nice experience. But I heard back fairly quickly, and again, I wanted to write right away, but I waited to the 6 months.
And Marlene, it sounds like you wrote the first letter. Is that?
Yes, I wrote the first letter, and at that time, the guidance we were given by Gift of Life was that that should be done within the first year. So I submitted it through the channels that you had described there. And the next day I got a call from the social worker at Gift of Life, who had been just on the phone with David's mother and wanted to know if she could call. And actually, she called a few hours later then.
We do things differently now, but yeah. Yeah. And I think, not to be overly restrictive of the process, but some of the things we've learned is that, in your case, that worked out really well, but sometimes when people are surprised, things don't always work out so well, because there's so many emotions, and it almost gets like, not to use the dating analogy again, but if you come on too strong, then people get a little bit nervous, and the emotion, they don't know what to do with it. So that's why we really try to encourage kind of a slow, more natural progression, so that people are both really ready for it and have a chance to kind of get to know each other better. And I think also, having people really think about what are their expectations. So,
One thing that I know Gift of Life does is if you feel that you need to have a ladder there, they will facilitate that meeting for you at Gift of Life or, at another location. If you feel really uncomfortable with just going and meeting a total stranger, they will be there to support you if you feel you need to do that the first time you meet.
Thank you. Yes, we've had people come to our office sometimes. Geographically, that makes sense. We're kind of a neutral setting. People live far apart from each other. We can be that local place, and yeah, we can be involved, and we don't have to be. It's really it's up to the parties to decide that. But we're certainly happy to facilitate that. So Winston, when you wrote that letter for the first time, you wrote it, but you finally sent it. Congratulations. What kind of expectations did you have once you put that letter in the mail? What were you thinking? What were you hoping? What were you imagining would happen after you sent that letter?
I wasn't imagining too much, and I wasn't expecting too much, because for me, getting my arms around this whole transplant thing was totally a different cultural experience. Okay, so a little bit about me. I came to the United States when I was 20 years old from a third world country, Jamaica. So I'm living in the United States. All this modern medical technology that most people here are comfortable with, I didn't have that growing up. I explained to someone once that my early experience with a dentist is sitting under a plum tree in the backyard, and the guy is cooking the equipment in an open pot over an open fire. You know, so now someone is telling me about getting a heart transplant. Okay, so I'm so sick, I'm in the hospital, and I really, not even so much concerned about the heart transplant as I am about my family and all the things that were going on. I'm losing my benefits probably. I know I'm probably going to lose my job. Then I have a heart transplant. Then I'm home, and I really don't know this person. What's my connection to this person? How is this going to change my life? That's what writing, all that was about. So once I wrote that and I was able to mail it, I felt some freedom from that whole thing. I didn't know what to expect from them after that. I didn't hear from them for, how long, McCoy? Maybe about 3 months?
I would say about 8 weeks.
Okay.
Something like that.
So we finally got a letter from them, and I couldn't read the letter. Literally couldn't read the letter. My wife read the letter first. She put the letter back in the envelope, and the letter literally sat on my dresser for about a month. Because this is all coming to grips. Because I didn't really have, again, not much expectation of this. I have this foreign thing inside my body. I have taken about $50,000, $70,000 worth of meds to keep me alive. What does this mean? You know what I mean? And are there any kids in here? No. And then you start to think about what does this mean in terms of intimacy with your partner and all that other kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Where is all this going? What's this doing to me? And I'm a 55, 50-plus-year-old man. So I didn't have much expectation. But once the letter came and I read the letter, again, it always was cathartic. And I'm writing a letter back and I'm sending them a card back. Now, if I can just expand a little bit, my communications with them, with my donor family, is with the mother and the stepdad. And it is essentially once a year on New Year's Day, I make a phone call. Hi, how are you doing? And we'll talk for an hour or so. Other than that, a Christmas card I will get. I'm not a big card writer, so I never send a card back usually. Just a little tidbit, we'll touch on this later on, I guess. We actually met a couple of years ago. I drove out to Kansas to meet them, and my wife and I and the dog. And the family and my wife are friends on Facebook. I am not friends of theirs on Facebook. I don't go on my wife's stuff on Facebook, but I hear about either through a card from them, the once a year that the card comes, or when we talk on New Year's Day, or on Facebook, family circumstances. So-and-so had a baby, so-and-so had another baby, so-and-so got married, so-and-so passed. I pick up the phone at the pass and then I'll call. If there's a new baby, I'll send a card to the person and go, hey, you know, congratulations, best wishes. But other than that, I am not that guy. Now, what I actually have is that I have a picture of him on my phone. And serendipitously, he and I have this thing in common that we will talk with anybody, anywhere, at any time. That's the first thing his mother tells me, that he had the gift of gab. And it's not a bad idea because the guy who has his heart has that little gift of gab. So at least once a day, to some total stranger on the street, I will talk about my donor. Now some people, his name is Jared. Jared Michael Cheek. If he was in that same body today, he would be brother Jared. He was in seminary school. He would be 31 years old. He had a brother, a sister, a stepsister. He had several nieces and nephews. And he was in school. You know, handsome guy. I keep thinking that I should look like him, but I don't. He is a 6'2" white boy from Kansas, and I'm a 6'2" black guy from New Jersey. So, you know, at least my adopted home state. And in a weird kind of way, I can hear him in my head every once in a while. But in an essential kind of way, the letter writing breaks down gets you yourself to get your arms around the issue of that. And if you heard from the person, I think it brings you closer to that. If you don't hear from them, it doesn't mean anything more than that the person is still wrestling with the circumstances, because we don't know what goes on in each other's lives, even when we live in the same house at times. You know, we are all, I mean, I'm married to that lady for close to 30 years, and I didn't know that she was an organ donor until I came to go through the process, you know, and that just tells that different things, you know. There are days that I get up that I'm a little bit frustrated about one thing or another, but through all that, you know, I look at the scar on my chest. Sometimes I see it, and sometimes I don't. You know, I stand in the bathroom and I'm like, who's that old guy with the gray beard? What's that scar about? Oh, I have to remind myself, you know. And so I think that everybody should take an opportunity if they have to write the letter. If you meet the person, you meet them. If you don't have to meet them, you know. Think of your donor as a friend that you haven't met yet, you know, and your donor family as the ultimate friend.
I think that's a good point, because most letter writing experiences don't end in meeting. And I think you touched on a good point that not everyone will hear back from their donor's family. And it doesn't mean that you wrote anything offensive in the letter, or you said anything wrong, or you upset them. Every family is on a different grief journey. Some are more into writing than others. I mean, there are just some people who aren't. You know, you're not a card guy. You know, some donor families are not card families. So, you know, not everyone is going to write. I would say I've not seen any studies. It might be interesting to see, is there a type of donor family that writes more often than others? I think generally speaking, women write more, but we have a slightly more men who are donors, so it may not be that women are a bit more writers, it just may be that women are more likely the next of kin, whether it's a mother or wife. You know, it really, it's, I can't predict whether someone's going to get a letter back or not. Recipients who have written and have not heard back, if they want to write again, we encourage that. It is okay to write again. I would give people time to write back. You know, if you write and it's a month and you haven't heard back yet, I don't think you need to write again, but there are some recipients who write every year on the anniversary. And it could be a couple of years until finally they hear back from the family. And that's happened sometimes. There are some who write every year on the anniversary and it's been 6, 7 years and they still haven't heard, and they're, you know, we haven't heard otherwise from the family that they're not interested. You know, generally speaking, families are happy to know how their loved ones' gifts live on, and they want to know. They're happy to know someone's life has continued on. They're just not able to write back.
I think one of the things that, you know, and we're talking about a really critical aspect of life. But one of the things that we need to be aware of a lot of times, that dynamics within families or dynamics within a person's life changes over time. So, you know, I suspect that should I still be around 20 years from now, it's possible that I may hear from one of his nieces or nephews who are currently 3, 4, or 5 years old. And those dynamics, we don't know what the relationship of the donor was with the donor family at the time, what role they played in that life, and what stressors or non-stressors are caused by their absence or their lack of presence. And so, you know, because I am at the stage now where I'm looking around and as I'm 8 years out from transplant, and some things in my life have changed radically, that I see myself totally differently. And I'm able to communicate with people at a different level about those kind of issues.
Jim, so you said you felt the urge to write.
Actually, it's kind of interesting because last year, again, 19 years out, we usually write just before the anniversary with a family update type situation, and we've met. To put that in perspective, But even that, last year, come this time of year, because October 19th when I got my transplant, I had my doubts. I wondered if I was bringing back some sadness into his life. And I hesitated. And it was funny because he called just before that week, and in conversation, he said, I can't wait to hear what's going on. And so, after all that, and all that confidence, with that doubt, he totally relieved it. And so I think it's important that we are sharing, not our medical issues, you know, but rather what this transplant has meant to our lives. And of course, I'm in another unique position for two reasons. One, married to a donor mother, so I live half the life of a donor, and at the same time very involved with Gift of Life, which means we interact with a lot of donor families. I thought that was normal. Over the years I've realized most recipients never meet a donor family, no less their own. And so I have very broad perspective of what different people go through, and on a very intimate basis with Pam, what she feels and how impactful those communications are, and even with people in the neighborhood when they say something which is, to me, innocuous, but very hurtful. Oh, at least you have another child. What? I mean, I don't know that as a guy I'd be that sensitive to it without seeing it through her eyes. And so that brings a very different way of looking at the whole communication thing. And there was out there, I don't know if everybody picked one up, there was an article, because a number of years ago, I was on the editorial board for the donor family newsletter for the National Kidney Foundation. And they were talking about this very subject. And as it came out, I volunteered to do a survey and find out and write an article about why people don't write. And that article is out there. It was written a number of years ago. And it was very much along the lines of things you suggested. But a lot of people don't write for all those reasons. And it was a good capture to that. I think there was a follow-on article on the donor side. I couldn't find that, and I'm not even sure if there really was. So if you haven't picked up that article, make sure you do, because it really complements what you said, Lara.
Okay, thank you. We're getting close to time, so I wanted to, if anyone in the audience has questions for the panelists or myself, or if we can do that. Yes?
I don't really have a question. I've reconciled the fact that I haven't heard from my donor family. I'm 4 years out from heart transplant. And I've written a couple of times. And the way I look at it now is I don't know what kind of person this was. And I don't know what kind of ethnic background they had. So I feel that it behooves me to celebrate everybody's holidays. I like Mexican food more so than maybe a Hispanic person. Apparently wasn't a dancer because I don't dance like that. But that's the way I can reconcile not hearing.
Great. Could everyone hear her comment? She hasn't heard.
Not the end.
Not the end. So she hasn't heard from her family. She's been writing, and since she doesn't know really anything about her donor, she's kind of acknowledging all faiths and in ethnic celebrations, and that's her way of staying connected to her donor family. And so she said she has a inkling for Mexican food more than she ever did, so she doesn't know if maybe there's a connection. But not a dancer. So yeah, you have to. It is. It's there's an emotional process, and you want to hear back because you want to know about this person that changed your life. But we have to respect that we may not. And so you found a way to kind of pay tribute to your donor without knowing for sure. Very nice. Thank you for sharing. Yes, sir.
Just a question on form. Did you prefer writing your letter in hand or on a word processor, for example? I don't know which is more personal or impersonal.
For Pam, what she received from me, or
well, for everybody.
I lost my penmanship essentially, so it's easier for me to do it in a word process.
I used to type it up and then I would hand write it. And then over the years that penmanship has gotten pretty bad. Especially if you're trying to do it in the first 9 months, I mean, forget it, right? I think it's perfectly acceptable today to do a typewritten letter and then to sign it. And if you want to use something sincerely with the signature, that gives it that personality to it.
My penmanship was bad before transplant. It couldn't get any better after transplant. We just went straight to the word process.
Yeah.
My middle daughter's a teacher, so she really kind of typed it out for us, so we did. And Janice and I signed it.
And Pam, as a donor family, would it be getting it in handwriting or typed? Would that impact kind of how you took the letter?
No, not at all.
It's the contents.
Just, I do think it's important to at least sign your name, with your signature. Does not type your first name on there, but other than, it really doesn't matter. Just that you get words. And it doesn't have to be a letter.
That's true.
It could just be a card that all you put in the card is, thank you for my gift of life, heart recipient. And don't forget, when you're sending a letter to your donor family, if they have donated multiple organs, it's important for them to know that you're the heart or the liver or the kidney or the pancreas or whatever it happens to be, because it sort of helps them put the whole puzzle into perspective.
Right, that's a good point. And we do get a lot of cards, and there are really we've seen some very beautiful cards that some of them are sympathy cards, some of them are thank you cards, and you would think that they were written for the purposes of donation or transplantation, and they're not, but the sentiment, I think, really captures it really beautifully. In the stripes, sir, yes.
I wrote the first letter, the only letter, a long time ago, and I never heard back, but I've written the second letter in my head, and even on paper a million times, never sent it. So after quite a few years now, is it possible to find out if the person is still alive or there? Or?
Well, if you wanted to send something, you could send it on, and we would make our best attempts to find the family. If we could not, we would let you know, and we would keep it on file, and the chance that the family would contact us. So,
is it possible to find out if the person is still there before you send the letter?
Or? We could look into that. Yeah. I just need, we can talk afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions for myself or the panel?
I'd like to say something real quick,
Yes,
if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
I think what's important to everybody that says they're a little concerned or whatever, just remember that you have the social workers here, like Deb was my social worker. And Janice and I are two different people. I mean, married 32 years, right? 33? 33 years. We're two different people. She'll talk to anyone. I mean, anyone, anywhere, she'll make a friend, she'll have a conversation. Me, I won't talk to anyone. I mean, just as the way we are. I'm not, the type of person that'll go out in the street and talk to people. So I needed Deb to kind of referee a little bit for us to get the whole understanding of the process. And when I received my letter back, we came in and met with Deb. And she read the letter to us, and the three of us read it together. And when I received the letters and Janice wanted to hang it on the wall, I didn't know how to tell her. I couldn't, sit in that family room and look at that letter every day. And then we discussed it with Deb. So it's important to realize, if you have concerns or you don't know how to approach it with your loved one or your wife and stuff, the social worker is there to help you. And Deb was a big part in it for us. I think that's important for everyone to know.
She did not pay me.
Is there any data or information as to people who send the letter expressing their gratitude? Two things. One, I was interested in, do those people expect to hear from the donor? Is that the general consensus? And the other part is, of those who, is there a percentage or any numbers of those who have sent a letter to the donor family and hear from them versus don't hear from them?
So I think, for your first question is, generally speaking, what's the expectation of writing a letter? Is it that they're going to hear back from the donor family? I think Deb might be better able to answer that because she has the conversations with the recipients on that side. So do you feel like?
Which question was what?
generally speaking, do recipients write the letter with the expectation that they're going to hear back? Is that most likely the reason people are writing?
No, I'm not feeling that. I see.
Use the mic, please.
Thank you.
That was fun to say. Yeah.
I found that on the continuum, it really is just a heartfelt thank you and just trying to reach out and, certainly I will say, as a social worker, it's been, I feel that I'm part of a very intimate process with our patients, and also as we receive donor letters and reading them out loud. And, but no, I do not feel that and we really actually talk about that on the front end before writing that first letter, that it's
Yeah,
more
I just am surprised that so many donors have responded. I mean, we wrote the letter, and I did, that was months ago. I really have no expectations of whether or not I will ever receive a response. And I was just wondering, because I'm
I don't have any numbers with me to say, 55% of people who have written hear back. I mean, I think more recipients write than donor families write, but then again, there are more recipients than there are donor families, right? Because if there's one donor, there could be 8 recipients from that one donor. I'm hesitant to give you a number, because I would be really pulling it just from my kind of anecdotal experience. I think more often than not, donor families will get the letter and not write back. I think if a donor family initiates the correspondence and then gets a letter back, they will write back. But if they're getting the first letter, then they may just be, they're satisfied and feels good hearing that information, and they, for whatever reason, can't or don't want to or choose not to write in return. But that what we hear constantly is that getting that letter meant a lot to them.
So,
it means a lot to them.
Lara, can I say something? Keep in mind that it's one recipient, and in the donor family, there's a lot of dynamics going on in the donor family. And the person who receives the letter is the person who gave consent for the donation. It may have been the mom and dad or just the mom who signed it, but the dad wants to be just as involved, but he's not really a part of it because they don't know how to contact him if they were divorced parents. Like for me, we were divorced. I signed the consent form. If they wanted to connect with my ex-husband, they have no contact information for him. And so maybe I'm not the parent who would be the one that would write back, as opposed to maybe his father would write back, say. So there's lots of family dynamics going on both sides of the equation. So just keep that in mind, that may be. We know a story where a donor family, they didn't think mom was ready to hear from the recipient, so they hid all the letters in the drawer at home. And then mom found them by accident years later and said, "What are these?" And mom said, I would have done anything to have had these letters all this time. So there's so many dynamics going on in the equation that don't discount that if you have or you have not heard. So, it's just so broad a topic.
So 2 comments. 1, thank you letters and cards. 2 examples I can think of. You get invited to a really nice dinner party someplace, and you write a thank you card. You really don't expect to hear those people comment back.
Yeah, exactly.
That's 1. 2, since I've had my transplant on the way here on a number of occasions, I've had little minor medical routines on the highway here. And I can remember stopping in Cherry Hill with my car, having eating problems, and I'm not feeling well. And a patrolman pulled over and sat with me for a little while I felt better. And I wrote his department and him a thank you card, and I never heard from him, and I didn't expect to hear from him. Now, aside from that, family dynamics. My donor, Jared, mom and dad are divorced. He lives in Kansas City, Missouri, and they live in a little town in Kansas City, Kansas. When I went out and met them, I ended up meeting the divorced dad also. I met the stepdad, met everyone. And he's involved in another organization without me getting into that. And he wanted at one point to have me do like a press release for this organization. And his mom was the one that was very protective of me in that sense, where she's just like, Winston, just so you know, you don't need to do this, you don't have to do this. You think about this, and if you don't want to respond to this at all, you just don't have to. So again, like you were saying, that the dynamics within a family can be so muscular, that there's so many things going on, that you really don't know why a person doesn't respond. And of course, there are people who just can't write. Okay? I mean, let's be honest and frank. We all have a family member or two that just can't write. And if they have to write a letter or go out and buy a card and sign your name to it, that would be the end of it. But this is about you. It's not about them. You know, it's about you. Even if it just goes out into the ethos, it's about you saying thank you, and it puts, if you believe in karma, puts a good karma on you. If you believe in some deity, it puts, you know, you're paying it back.
That is a perfect way to, I think, wrap up. I know we have, I want to thank our panelists. I know Jim also wants to make some announcements. So we want to thank our panelists.
I just want to tell you that it is so special to hear the interest in writing to the donor families. I just want to share a couple things from Second Chance, not the least of which, this is a picture, and I don't have a current picture, this is 2009. Here are some members who came out to our dinner dance that had more than 20 years with a heart transplant. And in 2009, I gotta tell you, Sean Duke's over to the left with the, with the red carnation. He came back and got another one a couple years ago, so he's on his second heart. That's not as unusual as you may think. And so there's hope even there. And it's just inspiring to me to meet and see people who are out that many years. And with the advances in the medical science, that's happening more and more. I mean, now when you meet somebody who's out 30 years, it's the aha moment. And I'm seeing people out 32 years, for example. And so that's the challenge you face. You got the transplant, whatever stage you're at, the immediate recovery, the longer-term recovery, the out there, the decade and more. And so back on October 19th, I celebrated when I came home 10 days after the transplant. So it's been 19 years. And in 1998, that's a picture that appeared on the front page of USA Today's newspaper from the U.S. Transplant Games. That really is me trying not to drown more than winning anything. But also, as you now know, 8 years ago today, I gave my gifted heart back to Pam, a donor mom. And so that's a very special connection. And we now share. I mean, we are one. Talk about your soulmates. And so there's several secrets that I shared last time, but I'll share them again because so many newbies here. But basically, the key points, right? Compliance. Be that your appointments here, getting involved, taking your medications, get active, get involved, paying back. We talked about that in terms of the letter, but so many other ways. You've got the Second Chance group here. We put on a couple of these meetings each year. These are fantastic meetings. Some of the other chapters meet monthly. We're too big here. We don't have a place to do it. But we do other things. So we have the Gift of Life donor program that uses volunteers. You've got the transplant house here at UP. They're always looking for volunteers. You've got a bigger transplant house over the Gift of Life donor program with 30 rooms over there. They're always looking for volunteers to come in. Whatever your abilities are, there's a place to serve and pay back and help other families who are following in your path. Okay? There's Transplant Recipients International Organization. I mentioned we're recording all this for that library. So you're touching them today, all across the country, inspiring them with what we're sharing here today. And of course, there's the United Network of Organ Sharing, which you learn more about maybe after your transplant. That's the contractor to the government that oversees all the regulations and rules that make for the distribution of recovered organs to us. They're made up of 22 committees, and they're always looking for recipients like yourself to serve on those committees for a couple of years and represent the recipient in those decision-making process along with the medical professionals. There's plenty of places where you can get involved based on whatever your circumstances are or your interests. And so basically, if you're going to go forward, you need to find a passion, a reason for living. And so those pictures there, especially the one over the right here, that's Sam down Asbury Park. Johann Schneider to the left, and myself, all three heart recipients who got to know each other here. If you're ever down in Avon by the Sea, stop in Schneider's restaurant and you'll see Johann. He owns the place. You'll be so welcome. We often have parties down there. So it's all about our families. It's all about having fun. It's all about living life to the fullest. And so by all means, network for success. Meet other people like yourself who are looking forward to life, and by all means give thanks. This is Roberto Cuevas, my donor. And so yes, I write a note each year to his brother, Gilberto, and he filters that for the rest of the family, because some of those other children are still having trouble dealing with the loss of their brother. And so does he pass that letter on to them? I don't think so. But it's his judgment, not mine, right? And so very definitely, in prayer, we can always communicate. So if you can't write it, you can certainly pray it.